I grew up surrounded by prosperous businesses, smart investments, and the belief that the family legacy had to continue. My father managed multiple companies in real estate and retail, while my mother owned several buildings. We were not extravagant millionaires, but we lived comfortably and with the certainty that success was in our DNA. From a young age, I understood that in my family there were only two paths. Either you inherited a business and kept it afloat, or you created your own and took it to the top. There was no room for mediocrity or lack of ambition. I, Zakiri, was clear that I did not want to simply follow in my parents' footsteps. I did not want to inherit something and live off of it. I wanted to build my own empire. My interest in technology and computer security began at age 14, when, by accident, I hacked into my school server to modify a small error in my detention record. Not only was I surprised by how easy it was, but I was fascinated by the complexity of the system. Since then, I spent hours learning about cybersecurity, encryption, and data breaches. I became obsessed with the idea of protecting valuable information, and over time I realized that this industry was not only exciting but also extremely lucrative. Every company, every bank, every hospital needs cybersecurity. It was a growing market, and I wanted to be a part of it. That is why, after graduating in computer science, I did not want to settle for a traditional job. I had a vision, a well-structured business plan, and the determination to make it happen. But there was a problem. To launch my company, I needed money, and not a small amount. It required capital to rent an office, hire an initial team, and acquire the necessary software and hardware. I was not asking for millions, just enough to take the first solid step. Convinced that my family would support my project, I prepared a detailed presentation with graphs, market analysis, and a clear proposal. I was ready to show that it was not just a dream, but a safe investment. What I did not know was that the answer I would receive would change my life forever. With all the confidence in the world, one morning I sat down with my parents in the living room and presented my idea. I have a solid plan to launch a cybersecurity company. I have analyzed the market, there is a growing demand, and I have a viable business model, I said as I unfolded graphs, market studies, and growth projections. I knew that in my family, no one invested in something without seeing clear numbers. So I not only spoke to them with passion, but with data. I did not want a gift or charity. I just asked them for a loan with interest. I would pay them back every penny as soon as my company took off. My parents listened in silence. My father, with his arms crossed, looked at the documents with an unreadable expression. My mother, on the other hand, had that look of pity, like when a little boy says he wants to be an astronaut and the adults feign enthusiasm but know it is not realistic. Finally, my father sighed. "Zach, we love you, but we do not think you have what it takes to run a business." His tone was not cruel or aggressive, but his words hurt more than any insult. My mother nodded and added softly, "Being a good programmer does not mean you will be a good businessman. Running a company is not just about having a good idea. You have to manage employees, accounts, investors, and frankly, son, we do not think you have that spark." That spark. The phrase stuck in my mind. My parents, who had always instilled in me that our family was one of entrepreneurs, did not see in me the potential to be one of them. I tried to argue. I told them about the growth of the sector, about the contracts that large companies sign with cybersecurity firms, about the profitability of this type of business. But they had already made a decision. "It is not personal, Zach," my father said, almost sadly. "It is just that we do not want to see you fail." But that was not true. It was not fear of my failure. It was lack of faith in my success. I am not going to lie. At that moment, I felt a mix of anger and disappointment. I did not expect them to give me millions, nor did I expect them to simply say, "Yes, of course, here's the money." But at least I expected them to trust me. My first instinct was to argue, insist, show them they were wrong. But at that moment, I knew it was pointless. If I had to build my empire without their help, I would. So I just nodded, picked up my papers, and stood up. "Thank you for listening." And with that, I left. That night I did not sleep. I could not stop thinking about how my own parents did not believe in me. But if cybersecurity had taught me anything, it was that every system has vulnerabilities. If one door closes, there is always another way in. I still did not know how, but I would find a way to make my business a reality. Without their money, without their approval, only with my conviction. Barely a month after my parents rejected my request for funding, something happened that left me completely bewildered. My cousin Bernard was getting married. A big, lavish, extravagant wedding. 3 days of events, champagne fountains, and a waste of money that seemed straight out of a movie. I was trying to enjoy the celebration, but deep down I was still frustrated by my parents' response to my venture. Until, in an instant, frustration turned into betrayal. I was standing with my parents near the buffet table when Bernard approached us. "Uncle, Aunt," he said with a big smile, "thank you again for believing in me and helping me with the funds for my hotel business. I could not have done it without you." I froze. Funds for his hotel business? I looked at my mother. I looked at my father, but they just laughed nervously and quickly changed the subject. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I had asked for funding for my business, and they told me no, that they did not trust me, that they did not think I had what it takes to run a company. But they gave Bernard money. I could not understand it. I faked a smile and walked away with a silly excuse. I did not want to make a scene in the middle of the wedding, but inside I was boiling. It was not just that they gave Bernard money, it was what it meant. They trusted him, but not me, their own son. After wandering around the reception for a while, I sat down in a secluded corner. I felt betrayed, but also stupid. How did I not see it coming? My family always saw Bernard as the perfect son, educated at the best schools, with the ideal attitude for business. They always said he had a gift for management. That was it. They believed in him because he fit their mold better. At some point, my grandmother found me. "Zakiri, what are you doing here? Why are you not enjoying the wedding?" I could not lie to her. I could not hide my frustration, so I just told her everything. My grandmother listened in silence, with her typical understanding look, and when I finished speaking, she said something I will never forget. "Sometimes people see potential in others because they see a version of themselves in them. It is possible that your father sees a younger version of himself in Bernard. But that does not mean you are not capable. Being different is not bad. It is just different." She leaned over and gently squeezed my hand. "You are smart. You work hard. Someday you will build something incredible. Only it will be on your own terms." Those words were like a balm. For the first time in weeks, I felt understood. That night I went home with a renewed determination. I was not going to prove anything to my family. I did not need their validation. I was going to prove to myself that I was capable. If Bernard could get funding and build his hotel, I was going to build my company without anyone's help, and I would do it better. The day after the wedding, I was still caught in that mix of anger and disappointment. My parents did not trust me, but they did trust Bernard. I spent most of the day locked in my apartment, turning everything over in my head. When my phone rang, it was my grandfather. He did not usually call me without a reason, so I knew immediately that something important was happening. "Zakiri, I want you to come see me," he said with his firm but calm voice. "Is everything all right, Grandpa?" "Everything is all right. I just want to talk to you." I had no idea what it was about, but I agreed. I knew my grandfather was not someone who talked just to talk. 2 hours later, I was at his house. My grandmother opened the door with a warm smile. "Come in. Your grandfather is waiting for you in his study." When I entered, he was sitting in his leather chair by the desk. But as soon as he saw me, he got up and gave me a hug. "Sit down, boy," he said, pointing to the chair in front of him. I sat down, waiting for him to speak first. He was not a man of beating around the bush. "Your grandmother told me what happened at the wedding," he said calmly. "And she also told me how you feel about your business plans." I nodded silently, not knowing what to say. "Zakiri," he continued, "I want you to understand something. I started my first business with an old van and a loan from my uncle. It was not easy. I also thought I was going to fail." He paused and looked at me seriously. But I did not. "Do you know why?" I shook my head. "Because someone believed in me." There was a moment of silence. Then my grandfather opened a drawer in his desk, took out a checkbook, and wrote something. When he handed it to me, I felt the air in my lungs stop. It was a check. I will not say the exact amount, but let us just say it was not pocket money. It was not enough to launch my company with everything I had planned, but it was enough to take the first real step. I stared at the check for what felt like 5 whole minutes. "Grandpa, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," he replied. This is not just money, it is trust. I tried with all my might not to lose my composure. For the first time, someone in my family believed in me. My grandfather got up, walked over to me, and put a hand on my shoulder. Make us proud. On the way home, I kept looking at the check. It was not just money, it was proof that someone finally trusted me. And if my grandfather believed in me, I was going to believe in myself too. With my grandfather's check in hand, I knew I had to be extremely smart with every penny. I could not afford to fail. The first thing I did was contact my two best friends, Adam and Luis, with whom I had worked on several projects during college. Guys, I have the first funding to start the company. It is not much, but it is enough to get started. I knew they also wanted to get into the world of cybersecurity, so it did not take them long to say yes. We pooled the little savings we each had and rented our first office. It was nothing fancy, it was small, old, and in the most dangerous part of the city. But it did not matter, because it was ours. The first few months were brutal. We worked between 14 and 16 hours a day, with no weekends. If we want this to work, we have to make some noise in the industry, we kept telling ourselves. We lived on instant noodles, coffee, and vending machine snacks. Luis spent hours on calls looking for potential clients. Adam was buried in code, developing security systems and penetration tests, and I did everything from getting new clients to programming, designing strategies, and keeping the accounts. But no matter how much effort we put in, at first no one took us seriously. Large companies already had their own security providers. Small companies did not want to spend money on something they did not understand. That is when our first big opportunity appeared. A medium-sized financial company had been attacked, valuable data had been stolen, and they were desperate to find a solution before the information leaked. It was the kind of client that could change everything. We met with them, analyzed the attack, and in less than a week we managed to recover their systems, repair the breach, and strengthen their security. When we showed them the results, the company's CEO was impressed. How did we not know about you before? That contract gave us enough money to move to a slightly better office, and more importantly, it gave us a reputation. From there, word of mouth did its magic. Larger companies started calling us. What started as an unsupported dream was now a growing business. I knew there was still a long way to go, but for the first time, I could see that it was possible. With our first big client secured, things started to pick up speed. Just 4 years after starting, we achieved our first major milestone. We had enough revenue to expand. We opened a second office in a nearby city. A year later, we opened a third in another major city. We were no longer just a makeshift startup. We were a real company. It was at that moment that we realized there was an even bigger opportunity. Companies did not just want us to solve their problems, they wanted us to teach them how to avoid them. The consulting model was different. It was simpler and more elegant. Meanwhile, Bernard's hotel, well, it was not so lucky. When the pandemic hit, the hotel business plummeted. Reservations were canceled, tourism stopped, and the hotel never fully recovered. Apparently, my parents gave him even more money to try to save it, but it did not matter. The hotel closed permanently. I am not going to lie, I felt bad for him. I did not want him to fail, but there was something I could not ignore. My parents had bet everything on him, ignoring me, and now I was the one with a thriving business while he was bankrupt. But what really shocked me was what happened next. When my company became a success, my family started referring to it as the family business. Yes, suddenly, the business they never wanted to fund, the business they said had no future, was now the family, and that I was not going to allow. 5 years after founding my company, I decided to organize a very special event, my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. They were the only ones who believed in me when no one else did. So I wanted to make sure they had a celebration worthy of their legacy. I rented a beautiful hotel ballroom, hired luxury catering, organized a live band, and made sure all their loved ones were present. While talking to one of their old friends, I overheard something that outraged me. "You must be proud of Zakiri," his friend said to my father. His response left me speechless. Yes, well, you know how it is. Family values, our guidance and support, put him on the right path. Excuse me. I got a little closer, pretending to serve something from the table, and I heard the phrase that finally broke my patience. It is practically a family business now. I was paralyzed. The same father who had told me I did not have what it takes to be an entrepreneur, the same father who preferred to fund Bernard instead of me, was now taking credit for my success. As the night went on, I kept hearing more snippets of conversations in which my parents painted themselves as the pillars of my success. We always knew he would do something great. We supported him every step of the way. It is what we do as a family. We lift each other up. It was as if they had forgotten everything that happened. I felt betrayed once again. I did not want to make a scene, but I could not let them get away with it either. So I made a decision. That night, I changed my speech. My original plan was to give a simple and emotional speech in honor of my grandparents. But after hearing my parents claim credit for my success, I knew I could not let it go. I went on stage with a glass in hand, took a deep breath, and looked at all the guests. I started light, with a relaxed tone. Today we are here to celebrate 50 years of love, patience, and resilience. I made a couple of jokes about how my grandparents' marriage was older than the internet, and how they had overcome all the trials life had thrown at them. But then I got serious. I want to talk to you about something else. The conversation stopped. Everyone was attentive. My grandparents did not just build a life together, they built a legacy. I paused and looked at my grandmother. A legacy of love, a legacy of trust, and most importantly, a legacy of faith in people. I turned my gaze back to the guests and continued. When I had a dream, and everyone else slammed the door in my face, they opened it. When no one believed in me, they did. Everything I have today I owe to their faith in me. There was absolute silence. My parents, who until that moment had been smiling proudly, were left with frozen smiles. They knew exactly what I was doing. So tonight, I want to propose a toast to Grandma and Grandpa, the only two people who believed in me when no one else did. This success is theirs, and no one else's. I raised my glass and toasted. The room erupted in applause. My grandmother was crying, with her hand on her heart. My grandfather, with his proud smile, nodded slowly. My parents, on the other hand, were stiff. Barely 15 minutes after the speech, my father found me near the dessert table. "What the hell was that speech?" he whispered, but with anger in his voice. "Were you trying to humiliate us in front of everyone?" I looked at him unflinchingly. "I just told the truth. You made us look bad." "No, Dad. You did that to yourselves when you decided not to support me." My mother intervened, visibly tense. "You did not have to air family problems in front of everyone." I took a deep breath, trying to contain my anger. But then my father made the mistake of saying the phrase that changed everything. "You act as if we have not done anything for you. We gave you a good life, a good education. How dare you make us look like the villains in your little success story?" My patience broke. Little success story? I felt my chest tighten and my face get hot. I was not going to be quiet anymore. It was time to say it all. I stared at my father, feeling the rage build up in my chest. "Little success story?" I repeated with a bitter laugh. "You did not believe in me. You had the money, but you gave it to Bernard without a second thought." The room fell completely silent. My cousin Bernard, the one with the failed hotel, was in an awkward corner, staring at his glass as if he wanted to disappear. My father gritted his teeth and pointed at me. "You are being ungrateful." That was the last straw. "Ungrateful?" I replied loudly. "No, I am not ungrateful. I am just saying out loud what everyone already knows." The tension in the air was palpable. My parents were speechless. The event that was supposed to be a celebration for my grandparents had now become a battlefield. I looked at my grandmother, who was looking at me with a soft, sad expression. Not disappointed, just sad. My grandfather had an arm around her, trying to keep her calm. That is when the guilt hit me. I did not say another word. I just turned around and left the room. I did not sleep that night. I had the argument over and over again in my head. Had I gone too far? But the next day, things only got worse. My phone started ringing nonstop. Messages from cousins, uncles, even old family acquaintances. The rumors had started. One cousin wrote to me, "Hey, Zach, is it true that you manipulated Grandma and Grandpa into giving you money?" Then came a message from an aunt on Facebook. "I am very disappointed in how you used your grandparents' emotions to get money from them." I could not believe it. My own parents were making up a twisted narrative to make me look like the villain. It was obvious what they were doing. They were trying to protect their image at all costs. But the worst thing was that there were people who were starting to believe them. I was not someone who enjoyed confrontation, but this time I could not remain silent. The rumors about me continued to grow. My parents made sure to spread their version of the story. They said I had manipulated my grandparents to get money, and that now I thought I was better than the family. I tried to ignore it, but every day new messages arrived from cousins, uncles, and even childhood acquaintances. But everything changed with a call. My grandmother called me in the early morning. My grandfather had passed away. My heart sank. He was the only person who believed in me from the beginning. I did not hesitate for a second. I packed my bag and drove to my grandmother's house. When I arrived, I found her more fragile than ever, but she still greeted me with a weak smile and a hug. Organizing the funeral was difficult, but I had to do it for him. It was my way of honoring him. During the ceremony, I saw how much my grandfather had impacted people. There were old business partners, childhood friends, neighbors. Hundreds of people came to say goodbye. I could not hold back the tears during the speech. My grandmother took my hand and gave me strength to finish it. But then came the part that would change my life again. The reading of the will. The lawyer began to list the assets until he came to the lake house. Zakiri and Laura will share ownership of the house. My cousin Laura smiled in surprise, but when I looked at my father, his jaw was tense. He did not say anything at the time, but I knew he was furious. During the following days, my father avoided me completely, until, one afternoon, while having tea with my grandmother, she looked at me and said, "Your grandfather was not taking sides, Zakiri. He was choosing love. That house represented his legacy, and he wanted it to be in the hands of those who would value it." However, my father did not see it that way. For him, the house was his, and he was willing to do anything to get it, even if that meant suing me. A few days after the reading of the will, my father showed up at my house unannounced. "Zakiri, this nonsense has to stop," he said bluntly. "The lake house belongs to me." I looked at him in disbelief. "Dad, the house is not yours. Grandpa left it to Laura and me." But he did not want to listen to reason. My father was not in his right mind when he made that will. That house should stay in the family. And what do you think Laura and I are? Silence. I knew that in his mind, Laura and I did not count as the family. Then he blurted it out. "If you do not give it to me the easy way, I will do it the hard way." Days later, I received a legal notification. My father was suing me. I could not believe it. First, they did not believe in me. Then they spread rumors about me. And now they wanted to take away the house my grandfather left me. They claimed I had manipulated my grandfather into giving it to me. It was absurd. But the problem was not just the lawsuit, but that my father had good lawyers. Not because they were right, but because they knew how to delay things to wear me down. Meanwhile, my mother was trying to be the mediator. "Zakiri, please, just give the house to your father. That way everyone can move on." I could not believe it. Move on after everything they have done? It is not what you think. We just want to avoid more problems in the family. The reality was clear. Their only concern was protecting my father's image, but I was not going to give in. Grandpa left me that house because he knew I would value it. And if my father wanted to take it away from me, he would have to fight for it. The trial lasted longer than I imagined. My father had good lawyers, not because they were right, but because they knew how to delay things. But he had no proof. There was no way to prove that I had manipulated my grandfather, because it simply was not true. Despite my father's attempts to discredit me, my grandmother's testimony was key. She made it clear that my grandfather made the decision fully conscious, and that he always wanted my cousin Laura and me to have the house. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. My father lost the lawsuit, but I was not going to sit idly by. After months of defamation and rumors, I decided to fight back. I sued him for defamation and damage to my reputation. I knew my father was in a delicate financial situation, but that was not my fault. After all, he had spent a fortune trying to save Bernard's hotel, and now he had wasted more money on this absurd lawsuit. And the worst thing for him is that I won. My father had to pay me compensation, and as if it were a punishment from fate, he was forced to sell his house to cover his debts. Ironically, all the money he had spent on lawyers was much more than the lake house was worth. But the most shocking thing was discovering the real reason for his obsession with the house. It was not for memories, nor for maintaining a family legacy. My father wanted to sell it to regain his financial stability. From the beginning, it was all about money. And in the end, he lost everything. The same values he preached about family, honor, and respect crumbled because of his own greed. I, on the other hand, not only kept the house, I kept my dignity intact. After everything that happened, I learned a valuable lesson. True support does not come from blood, but from those who truly believe in you. My grandfather was the only person who trusted me when no one else did. He understood my vision when others rejected it. If I had listened to my parents, if I had accepted their idea that I did not have what it takes to be an entrepreneur, today I would not have anything that I built. It was not easy. It was years of sacrifices, long working hours, uncertainty, and doubts. But every obstacle made me stronger. And when my company grew, my parents wanted to be part of the success they had previously belittled. They tried to take credit for something they never believed in. But the merit was not theirs, it was my grandfather's, who gave me the first opportunity. It was my friends who trusted my vision. And it was mine because I never gave up. Today I look back and I know I made the right decision. I cut ties with those who only wanted to take advantage of my success. And although losing the relationship with my parents was not easy, I know it was necessary. Because in the end, my success is not theirs, it never was. It is my story, my struggle, my victory.